Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I'm here by myself today to talk about the crisis that I see between men and women. I am getting ready to do a TED Talk, a TEDx talk, on what 1,000 men's tears reveal about the crisis between men and women. And so as I've been thinking about this more and more and practicing, there are a couple things that are on my mind. I really want to be a resource for how people in general, but especially men and women, can actually connect and communicate and be heard and understood. And, you know, there is a way in our culture where there's often a breakdown between what men say and what women hear, and what women say and what men hear, and that we can be using some of the same words in completely different ways, or we have different needs. And this doesn't necessarily just mean that all men are one way and all women are another way. We all have masculine and feminine. And, you know, every day I'm talking to people about their lives and their relationships, and relationships are complex. And no matter how much work we do, there are always these places or pockets of hurt or pain inside of ourselves, and they can get triggered easily. And that's okay, right? It's not actually a problem when you know how to work with it. I'm just thinking of a fight I had recently in my current relationship. We don't often fight, but we had a fight recently, and we were yelling at each other on the phone. And within 20 minutes, you know, we had come back to our hearts and our vulnerability, and we were working with it together, but we were both really shaken up. And we were looking at, God, why did we get so triggered? Why was there such a struggle? And as we both did our own work to see, okay, this is what felt vulnerable for me, and this is what felt vulnerable for me on both sides. And I really had to own my wound that when someone tells me, especially my romantic partner, I'm hurting, I can start to go into a defense around, yeah, well, here are the ways that I've hurt, that I haven't said anything in the past week or the past month or the past year, right? It's not something I'm proud of, but there's a way that the way my personality is organized, I can endure things, or I can just be like, that's not such a big deal, until I get poked at, or I imagine I'm being poked at, right? Who knows what's happening on the other side? And suddenly I have a backlog of frustrations. And I was talking to a man recently who said, at the beginning of my relationship, I wasn't as kind or good to my wife as I would want to be. And she's still holding on to it. And I don't know if she'll ever forget or forgive me. And as we were talking about his current situation, I said, you know, I don't think it's that she will never forget or forgive you, but what's happening right now is mirroring some of what happened in that past time in your relationship. And so once there's a rebuilding of trust and you two are relating in a different way and she's feeling safer and she's feeling more cared for, she will have an easier time letting this go. But when she's not feeling cared for, right? When we are not feeling that we are seen and understood and taken care of, we bring up the past, and the past starts to feel like it's happening right now, right? It may not be actually happening right now, but it feels like it is. And there may be situations where it is the same experience that happened in the past as now. So anyway, I think the important part about this is that when we have the tools to be able to have vulnerable conversations, it's okay when we get our feelings hurt. It's okay when we get upset with each other. It's okay even when we have an occasional fight. When we actually know how to heal and repair, then we're not building upset upon frustration, upon disappointment, and growing farther and farther apart from each other. One of the things I talk about in my TED Talk is that eventually we can simultaneously feel our feelings, witness that we're having the feelings, and then communicate about how we want to be received or communicated with or, held or listened to in the midst of those feelings. And, it's tricky. It's not easy, especially in our challenging and upset moments. But that eventually we can sit down with each other and say something like, hey, I'm feeling really upset today. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. And I'm wondering if you would sit down with me and listen, even if it's for 5 minutes. And I might talk and I might scream and I might cry, and I'm not going to attack you or aim it at you, but would you be willing to listen and not try to change or fix me for these next couple minutes? Right? That's one of the things I used to teach women in my women's workshops, is that men sometimes need an education about that it's actually okay to just sit here and listen. And actually, I really would like you to just hold me or hold my hands rather than intellectualize or give me advice. And one of the pieces of the TED Talk also is really looking at whether that framework would work for men sharing with women. Because what I see is that the cultural context of men's vulnerability being portrayed as weak has had a really powerful effect on men. And I can't tell you how many men come to me saying that they are afraid that if they share their vulnerability, they're going to be seen as weak, or they're going to be disrespected, or they're not going to be wanted anymore, even in their most loving relationships, maybe especially in their most loving relationships. And so as I thought about whether that framework would work for a man sitting down with a woman, I realized that the cultural context of men's vulnerability being weak or unmanly really needs to be addressed. And I see it as men coming to me with an ask for women. And it reminds me of the countless number of women I've heard who have said, God, I just wish that when I'm emotional, a man wouldn't think I'm crazy or too much. Right? We as women often have that desire, like, please don't think of me as crazy or too much. Please just let it be okay that I'm an emotional being. And the ask that I see men bringing to me is, please don't believe the cultural context that when I share my vulnerability with you, I become weak. And the second piece is, will you please do what it takes to be able to continue to love me and be attracted to me when I'm fully human with you? I have a theory that a lot of women are afraid of men's vulnerability because we are and again, I don't want to make this a generalization for everyone, but the theory is that it's often a fear that comes up for women, that if you as a man are not the rock and not the stable one, even in a moment, then somehow we won't be able to count on you. We won't be able to be cared for by you or protected by you. And ultimately, what I found, being a woman who accepts men's vulnerability, is that men don't become more weak as we do this work together. They don't become deflated. They actually become much more alive and more empathic and vital and happy and more in integrity and more generous with their community and their families. So my talk is really about the need I see to shift our cultural context around men's vulnerability and to welcome men's vulnerability and to support women as well, to learn to not only welcome men's vulnerability, but to be able to do our own work to welcome the vulnerability and then continue to be connected and intimate and loving together. For so many of us, the reason it's hard to sit in a relationship or in a conversation in a relationship where someone's being vulnerable or someone's upset or someone's disappointed, so much of that goes back way into our past, into our original relationships with our parents and our family and our caregivers. And we are still, as a culture, teaching men and boys that it's not okay to cry or be vulnerable. I had a recent conversation with a man who's going through a relationship challenge who apologized for crying with me. And every time that happens, I say, please don't apologize, right? You need a place to be able to feel and fall apart and work through things. And you don't have to hold it together here. So I very strongly support men to find that place inside of you where you know that your vulnerability is not weak or unmanly, that it takes an incredible amount of strength, especially with our cultural context, to bring that vulnerability. And that when you bring your vulnerability and a woman or any other person negates it or tells you they don't like it or it's not okay with them, a lot of the work I do with men is around sharing the hurt, sharing the pain, opening their hearts, while at the same time standing up for themselves and saying, that's not okay with me, right? We don't have to be, whatever gender we are, we don't have to be assholes and say, fuck you, I can't believe you're not listening to me, or you're awful because, I'm being vulnerable with you and you can't even hear me. But we can sit back and say, ouch. And we can create boundaries. And we can say, hey, here's how I need to be treated for this relationship to continue. A lot of the men I work with identify as nice guys, and standing up for yourself can be a hard thing, but it's also really important. And there are men I work with on the other side of divorce who are standing up for themselves for the first time and are free and are, enjoying the freedom of making their own choices and letting their desires be right and doing what they want to do when they want to do it. So it's not that a relationship has to end, but I think part of the crisis that men and women are going through is that we're trying to get our needs met from each other. We're afraid for the other person to grow and maybe grow beyond us or change and leave us. And so then we hold back our truth. And instead of consciously and skillfully having a conversation about hurt or disappointment or upset, we can tend to shove things under the rug. And that creates relationships that are more distant where suddenly one partner says to the other, I can't do this anymore. I don't even want to be together. I've been suffering for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, right? Without even talking about it. So the invitation I have for you today, whether you are a man or a person of any gender, is to really look at, what are you hiding? What are you upset about, disappointed about, frustrated about, and not talking about? Now, this doesn't mean that you then go bring your whole list of complaints to someone, but first we have to be honest with ourselves. In order to actually be intimate in a relationship, we have to be honest with ourselves. Then we can actually take the time to see, what is my part in this? How am I helping to create this? Because it takes two to tango. And so once we can see our part, we can actually own our side of the equation. And we don't have to go blame and attack someone for the situation that we're frustrated about. My vision, my mission is to have every man's heart held in his most vulnerable places, and to really make the cultural changes necessary for men to thrive and to have no man suffer silently or alone. And I do believe that in addition to the men and young men who are working on this, and the organizations and workshops that are coming together for men, women have to be a part of this. And so if you are a woman, I invite you to get on board with starting to understand how to welcome men's vulnerability. And if you need help, you can reach out to me. And if you're a man who's in a situation where your vulnerability isn't welcomed, I invite you to have a conversation and start to ask for what you need. It pretty much inevitably will change your relationship, right? It may end your relationship. We don't know what's going to happen. But to live in a way where you are alone and suffering silently isn't good for anyone. It's not good for you. It's not good for your partner. It's not good for your family. It's not good for the world. You matter. So if having a conversation like that is something you can't even imagine, or you're not sure how to do it, feel free to reach out to me. I work with many men who are looking for guidance around having these conversations, and I get to be, part of what I love is I get to be a woman who, I don't speak for all women, but I get to reflect in the moment. Yes, when you said it like that, I felt trust and I felt cared for and I felt connected. And then when you said that part, I suddenly felt like I was dropped, or my trust was lost, or I didn't matter anymore, right? So we get to have those conversations, and I get to reflect where those things happen, so that you can have a real time knowing of how in your bones to have a conversation that's connected and intimate and loving and supportive, even in those moments of upset or frustration. So I hope this has been helpful, and keep an eye out for my TEDx talk, What 1,000 Men's Tears Teach Us About the Crisis Between Men and Women. And if there's anything I can do for you, reach out to me. You can find me on my website, ShanaJamesCoaching.com, or the Facebook page is facebook.com/True Success for Men. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to ShanaJamesCoaching.com/quiz, or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point. and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144, or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.